Hello, class. This is going to be a very quick lecture on Mrs. Dalloway, but I wanted to let you know that because this is not going up later today than I thought, you have until Thursday to do entries on the Blackboard discussion page. Um, so this is a little, hopefully helpful guide to Mrs. Dalloway. Hopefully, before this, you have watched the Stream of Consciousness little video on the class YouTube playlist. Okay, we're just going to quickly do kind of an overview of the opening of Mrs. Dalloway, and hopefully this will make the rest of the novel easier for you. This is a novel with a famous opening. Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself. It's the title of the book, Mrs. Dalloway. So Clarissa is having a party today, and this whole novel takes place in one day. And she's going to go do some of the errands herself. She's going to go buy the flowers. So she sets out, and she's going to walk through part of London, and we'll get this walking through the city. This is very similar to James Joyce's Ulysses, which also is stream of consciousness and has a person going around like a city in one day. So like I just took pictures of my book because I've underlined and marked it, and these are helpful. And these are themes and motifs that are going to come back again and again in the novel. So we get Clarissa thinking, right, what a morning, right, what a lark, what a plunge. For so it had always seemed to her, right, this is stream of consciousness. We are in Clarissa's mind. You can tell because of all the exclamation points. And she compares the air is like the flap of a wave. Waves are very big for Virginia Woolf. Hold on. Excuse me. This novel was almost called The Waves. So pay attention every time we see a reference to something that's like a wave. The kiss of a wave, chill and sharp, and yet, right? So now, for a girl of 18, she is not 18. She is 52. She is remembering this key moment, like one of the key moments in her life, the moment that she rejects Peter Walsh, her boyfriend, for the man who will become her husband, Richard Dalloway. So she has this memory of that day with Peter. So, and then, I'm gone to the second page here. She's remembering Peter. She stiffened a little on the curb, waiting for Durrell's van to pass. A charming woman, Scrope Purvis, thought her. Okay, we are now in someone else's mind. Scrope Purvis, a person we will never see again. And this makes reading the novel super complicated because you are going to flip into other characters' minds and we're never going to see those characters again. But we're just kind of like going around into people's minds. So he knows, right, she is over 50 and he knows her, right? She's like his neighbor. And she's been very ill. She has had influenza, which is a very serious disease. And so she's been sick for a long time, and a lot of this novel will be about her addressing her mortality. But okay, so we get a point of view change. Notice these transitions in the novel. Then we are, for having lived in Westminster, right, Clarissa was positive. Oh, I'm back in Clarissa's mind now. Then Big Ben strikes, and we get the chiming of Big Ben. So this is time, and time is also going to be really important in the novel. And then she has this kind of thought about life, and a lot of this novel is about like the biggest thoughts you could ever think about life and death. And like people loving life and her kind of loving this moment. And the end of this page is really stream of consciousness, where she's just kind of noticing all the stuff going on in this moment in London in June. So we're back to time, the specific moment of time, and you can see how the stream of consciousness is working. Okay, so moving on, for it was the middle of June, the war was over, except for someone like Mrs. Foxcroft at the embassy last night. So she's remembering meeting this woman at the embassy, who, right, she's still mourning the death of her son, and this is a kind of memory that Clarissa will come back to again and again. This woman who is like her role model, Lady Bexborough, who opened a bazaar, they said, with the telegram in her hand. John, her favorite, killed. Right? That this woman, like, so this would be during World War One. Her son is killed, and you get notified that by telegram. But she still carried on her like charity work, which would have been opening. It would have been a charity bazaar, like a fundraiser, and she still did her charity work, even though, right, like that very moment she was encountering the death of her child. And that is going to be kind of a juxtaposition for this novel, where Clarissa is going to have a party, and we're also going to have a lot of thoughts of death and notices of death. Okay. So then she meets, at the very bottom of 5, she meets her friend Hugh and his wife, and now I'm moving on to the next page. They're coming up to see doctors, and we're kind of going on, and she's thinking about Hugh and uh, her relationship with Hugh and Peter, right? These people were all friends together. So we're back inside her memories. Just continuing on here. So she's thinking about her relationship with Peter, and how they, they have the kind of relationship that they're always going to be close, even though their letters don't really say that. But she also remembers, this is key at the bottom of this page, page 7, Peter's criticism of her, that she was just going to be basically a society woman, that she was the perfect hostess, right? And she talks about this makes her cry. So she kind of wants to reject Peter's impression of her, and she marries Richard. Going on the next page, she breaks up with him outside in a garden by a fountain, in a garden. And flowers and gardens are going to be very important in this novel. And then we have this key passage. This is the arrow at the bottom of page 8. And this is kind of what I call, notice when I said modernist moment. You're running an errand and you're having the deepest thoughts that you could ever have. And that's kind of a modernist moment. Now, people might say, that's not exactly realistic. Sometimes you're running an errand and you're just like, doop, doop, doo, 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 doo. You're not always either remembering the most important things that ever happened to you, or thinking giant thoughts like Clarissa said. Right, she had a perpetual sense as she watched the taxi cabs of being out, far out to sea and alone. She always had the feeling that it was very, very dangerous to live even one day. Not that she thought herself clever or much out of the ordinary. She talks about she doesn't really have a very good education. But this idea, it was dangerous to live even one day. And kind of really think about what that means for her. What does it mean to live emotionally, to put yourself out there, to be at risk emotionally. She has a very comfortable life. She's a kind of a rich society lady. So what would she mean by it's dangerous? And also this feeling of being far out to sea and alone. That she feels isolated. She's outside looking in. This sounds a lot like Stevie Smith's poem. So this is a key passage. And then we move into one of the most key passages of the novel, and this is going to be repeated, and you want to look for this as a recurring motif. Okay, she goes back to remembering all of her friends and kind of that house party where she broke up with Peter. And she talks about Sally Seton, and we'll see Sally. And then she thinks about, did it matter then, she asked herself, walking towards Bond Street, did it matter that she must inevitably cease completely? All this must go on without her. Did she resent it, or did it not become consoling to believe that death ended absolutely? Okay, just thinking some totally normal thoughts about dying, right? Like she's really meditating this. We come back to our kind of wave, the ebb and flow of things. Um, she feels like she's a part of everything. She looks in Hatchard's is a bookstore, a famous bookstore in London. She looks in the bookstore window and she sees this book spread open. This is the quotation she sees. Fear no more the heat of the sun, nor the furious winter's rages. This is a quote from Shakespeare's Cymbeline, and I pulled the full quote out so you could see it. And it's a quote about dying, right? Everybody dies. Golden lads and girls all must, as chimney sweepers come to dust. That's why you shouldn't fear the heat of the sun or the furious winter's rages, because we're all gonna die. So you shouldn't be afraid of like we have the seasons of living and dying, like we're all gonna die, right? So don't fear these things. And then we move right very quickly into the effects of World War One, right? The world's experience had bred in them all a well of tears. And she goes back to thinking about Lady Bexborough. She sees other books. Then she thinks about like, if she could live her life over again, she thought, could it have looked different? Again, thinking the most giant thoughts you can possibly think. What would happen if I lived my life over again? And then there's this great moment of stream of consciousness. She's in Bond Street, which is like a shopping street in England. And she's like the shops and all of these things, about all these things. Then she's looking at the fishmonger's shop. She's looking at the fish in the window. And she says, that is all. That is all. Then she's looking at a glove shop in the glove shop. And looking at the gloves make her remember her uncle who basically died during World War One. And this is this great moment of stream of consciousness, again, where you're having these thoughts in the middle of doing something very prosaic. Okay, moving quickly. Again, we have waves, and then we have she gets to the flower shop. I'm sorry, so she's at the flower shop. There are flowers. She's talking to Miss Pym, who is the lady who's like the sales clerk at the flower shop. So while she's talking, like this is the black arrow at the bottom, a pistol shot in the street outside. This is Clarissa's point of view. She hears it as a pistol shot. Miss Pym says those motor cars. So it's actually a car backfiring. Oops, I have gone too far. Yeah, it's a car backfiring. And then we have this transition from outside of Mrs. Dalloway and then Miss Pym. And then the car that did the backfiring is like a fancy car. And we can't see who's in the car. And everybody is looking at the car and they're speculating. Was it the Prince of Wales? Was it the Queen? Was it the Prime Ministers? Nobody knew. Edgar J. Watkins, just a guy on the street. The Prime Minister's car. We'll never see him again. So again, think about and Wolf is going to do this. This is important to note. She's going to take an incident and have lots of people react to it and perceive it from different angles, kind of like Picasso does with Cubism. So we get Edgar Gay Watkins, then we get Septimus Warren Smith, who is the other main character of Mrs. Dalloway. He hears it, and then we get his wife, right, who thinks about, is the Queen in the car? And then, right, it could be the Queen, it could be the Prince, it could be the Prime Minister. Nobody knew. And then we come back to Clarissa. She's like, it's probably the Queen. So you can see, I included this example so you can see how you get one incident and you see it from multiple points of view. But there's no central truth. We will never know who is really in the car, right? We only see everybody's perspectives. Okay, so I hope this helps a little bit with what can be a very difficult novel.